All right, welcome back to this special edition of Agile After Dark. During this episode, we ask, hey, where's the challenge? When agile companies, consultants, and coaches integrate into the DNA of large corporations and consulting firms. It's a good one, so listen in.
Welcome to Agile After Dark, the podcast that addresses agile topics not talked about in the light of day. I'm your host, Greg Adams-Woodford, sitting here, and over there is Brandon Gartley, our hunky co-host.
Always good to be here with you, bud.
Well, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, which I implore you, nay, demand you to go listen to, you will understand why he is the hunky podcast co-host. Do you want to elaborate, Brandon?
Yeah. My wife, who's much smarter than me, came on and talked about IO psychology and agile. So definitely listen if you haven't had a chance.
So, and where do they go to get the episode, Brandon?
So agileafterdark.com.
Okay. So today's episode, it's a special episode. We're calling it 7.5, Corporate Antigens, Getting into Agile's Interspace?
Yeah, Interspace. Bill Paxton, baby.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, if ever get like the little thing, like makes what's his name like dance around and stuff.
Yeah, there was like 5 people who saw that. Seriously, I'm not joking.
Yeah, no, I know. But I mean, all joking aside, I mean, I do think that, we kind of want to shrink ourselves down, right? And really kind of try to get ourselves into the topic of this, which is how do we understand large corporations, large consulting firms? What is like infused in their DNA that may actually kind of fight back, right, against what agile principles really try to infuse and what we as agile coaches and consultants and what have you try to bring into a corporation.
Or companies that are bought, that are small companies that maybe bought maybe a startup or maybe, a smaller company who are bought by a bigger company. And when they infuse that DNA, which sounds a little dirty, but if they've used that into the bigger company, does the larger corporate organization or entity fight back against that innovation, which is essentially like a virus, right? Because it's something new and foreign, and all of the apparatus, which is whether it's HR or finance or whatever those systems are, all have to sort of adjust to this new thing coming in, and it's the colossal. It can be the colossal fight between. Is it going to squash the innovation and the whole reason that company was bought? Or is it going to let that virus help evolve the company? If I can get too biological for you.
Yeah. Back to biology 101, back in high school, which I don't remember at all. But yeah, no, and I think that's absolutely right. And, I kind of come from a background of being part of large consulting firms, large, organizations. I definitely, even as an employee within that organization or consulting firm, have felt that it's just too large to change, a mind in any influential way. But I think that because of the way that delivery is going, right? The large consulting firms, they're concentrating on delivery, right? But how that kind of delivery is viewed now, I think you kind of have some good insights into kind of what are the models that really kind of drive that.
Well, if you're talking about what motivates people, from a business perspective, in a startup, you're typically motivated by, well, we just need to get a client. We just need to get the next dollar so that we don't have to have another round of funding, which dilutes our shares, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on and on. So I'm going to take out the trash. I'm going to park in a bad parking spot. If you're in Phoenix and it's, very hot, you're not happy about that, but you're willing to do it because you think there's some upside. When you work for a big company, you've got great benefits, you've got good health insurance, you've got a good parking spot. So there's a lot of incentive not to want to have change, number one, right?
Right.
Secondly, you're compensated in a different way. You're not compensated on a stock option program, for instance, or some kind of sweat equity kind of situation.
The promise of the future versus the now.
That's right, and it's a risk, that you're going to take, but you're willing to take it, especially if you're younger. And when you get older, you're like, I'm not doing that, and that would be my case. So anyway, but what happens is when you get into a big corporation, there are things that exist that are, it's sort of called a variable comp model, which is
Right.
essentially you don't get a fat salary. You're compensated on how you do as it relates to performance, which could be a sales number, it could be adoption, it could be, an overall target for a region. But those variable models essentially mean that you're motivated by money and not this isn't always the case because there's a lot of good people out there doing good work, but it doesn't necessarily keep the customer front of mind, right? Because you're literally focused on what is in it for you. Now, a corporation likes that because they're like, if I make it in it for them, that adds up to what's great for the corporation, not necessarily for the client.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pull up my nerd thing out here because that is what I do. But I mean, we've talked before about how recent surveys, talk about the challenges of scaling agile in large organizations, company culture at odds with agile values, lack of experience with the methods, lack of management support, organizational resistance to change. That's not necessarily just on the client end.
Right. That's
Right?
absolutely right. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is in terms of like we talked about the DNA and like, so what do you, in my mind, I'm kind of curious from your viewpoint, like what do we need to be successful to kind of be the CRISPR? We're going to get in there and change that DNA a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do we need to do in order to, what are some of the things that you think would be good pathways to making that change?
Well, I think one of it is to understand what the business model is and to understand what the current organization is motivated by. So if it is like I talked about a variable cost model and you're talking about pipeline and bookings and revenue and you come in as a company, and let's just say that the company has a 2-year window to prove itself to be an independent organization. And they do okay the first year, but that second year they're going to struggle because a lot of the things that they're thinking about are synergy deals with the parent company, and the parent company doesn't understand what the offering is that the smaller company is giving. So there's an enormous amount of education that has to occur that takes time, just like it does when you're trying to launch an agile train or whatever it might be. The same thing goes for a company. So there's this lagging time period, but you're always under the clock to perform as a small company that was acquired to show that the investment made for buying that company is going to pay off. And so there's a constant pressure to say, no, we're being successful. And you're not being measured by typically you're not measured by the attributes you were bought for. You're being measured on a financial scale that attributes itself to the larger corporation.
Yeah. And so my question to you is, looking as the corporate larger consulting firm, I'll take on that persona, if you will. So I'm going to look at you and say, all right, well, you can have these agile things and these little hippie ideas about, change and, really kind of making people feel better about their jobs and so forth and so on. But I still have my dashboard. So how are you going to motivate the people that are normally going to be coaches and people that are out kind of doing that? How are you going to motivate them to kind of increase the size of the work that we do while still not maybe losing that culture that you have?
So you're talking about the people who are essentially a part of, let's say it's an agile company and they're coaches. Let's just say that as an example. How do you keep them motivated when it almost seems antithetical to what they do because they're preaching against that to every big corporation that they're working with?
Exactly.
Right? And
exactly.
They're like, well, how do you keep them motivated? And I think it's a challenge. And I think that that comes to management, frankly. That comes to a position of how are you from, and let's use the word management at a loose scale, use the word leader is probably a better word, to help them understand what the benefits are and how having more resources, and when I mean resources, I don't mean people, but more options to do things. Like, remember, Brandon, when we first did the first podcast, we went to Chicago and we used the
Chicago studio
down at the Merchandise Mart, and it was amazing. Unfortunately, it's lost to the archives because it didn't actually get recorded.
Not my fault. Different producer.
Not his fault. But remember, that was a corporate asset that we could use. And so there's a lot of assets there, but there's also a lot of fallout that can happen because people just get disenchanted with the fact that I now work for a big company and they're going to dictate certain things for me, and I'm going to live in a certain place and my meals account for this much, and as somebody who's not had any restrictions on an expense account in the past versus having some, it is a bit of a, it's a bit of a pain, right?
Yeah. Well, and I will say, I mean, I think we both came from a similar background in terms of, we're going to have another podcast about creating a different MVP. It's about the team. It's about creating that culture. Now, you're not always going to necessarily be able to do that because you may have coaches kind of off on their own, right? But making sure that those people are supported, right? And I know that you've done that very well, at least on this particular account. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we, our sort of ghetto barbecue. I don't want to meant to say that. That might be like a little controversial, but we bring the couch out.
By the way, licensed to grill. How did I not?
Oh,
I know. How did I not come up with that?
Come on. There's a picture on Slack if you want to look at. But we bring the couch out and we have a barbecue. And the neighbors come over and we mingle and it's fun. But that's part of it, right? It's creating. When I first started on this account, it was, hey, this is not an account everybody wants to go to. And my specific goal was build an account where people want to go to that account because they're going to have fun and they're going to be part of a good team. Mm-hmm. I think we've done that. And it's not just me.
No.
It's all of us, right? And we all continue that and we all commit to that, just like everything. And that's how we keep our bubble.
Yep.
Right?
That is how we keep our
bubble.
And
even if, the company that was purchased bubble pops, you still can always create your own bubbles inside of whatever organization you can, and you should do that, right?
Yep. So on the note of popping bubbles, we're going to take a quick break. Please send your feedback to agileafterdark.com, and we'll grab another drink and be right back. So I remember you saying something along the lines of we had run into something on our client and you had said, "Where's the challenge? I don't see the challenge." I was like, "Where did that come from? Like, what's the history behind that?"
Well, so we were given these impossible. So we worked for this guy named Chris Dragon, and Dragon was a submarine commander, and he essentially just had, "These are your orders, go do it," and he didn't have there was no negotiation strategy with him. So Tony Crump from Hooker, Oklahoma, who talked like this, "Now go, what?" And he would always tell me before he said anything, "Now go, wipe that dumb look off your face." And I always thought Crump, could kind of corral Dragon. But every once in a while, we'd have this impossible task, this work task that we would have. Go develop 36 hours of content in 2 days with 5 people. And I would say, it's not physically possible for us to do that. And Crump would look at me in the office with Dragon, and I look over to Crump, and I'm like, "Crump, because you're responsible for all these people." He'd be like, "Where's the challenge? I don't see it. Show it to me. I don't see it." And he put his arms out like, "Show it to me. I don't see the challenge." And we'd walk out of the room like, "Are you kidding me? What is it with the hotel? We can't do this." He's like, "It's okay. We're just going to lie. We'll figure it out what it is going to be." Welcome back to Agile After Dark. We are in Apollo 13. Do you know why it's called Apollo 13?
Well, there's a lot of silver that's around us, and it was not a successful mission to the moon, I believe.
No, it
so
wasn't.
it kind of landed in the heartland, I guess.
It did. And where did this unsuccessful mission begin? I think it was Home Depot, and I think this is actually supposed to be. It's like insulation, right?
Not the itchy kind,
but it has a silver sheen to it, and it's in the middle of Brandon's living room. So we're very happy. And by the way, our favorite podcast co-host,
right? Co-host,
which is Sassy, is here. The cat that loves to be a part of the podcast is here with us. And by the way, we are, because it is After Dark, drinking. I'm doing something different, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
yeah,
different.
Yeah, good.
I've moved away from my bourbon. I'm moving on to I don't know, some people might say it's not the most masculine drink, but it's a vodka and cranberry kind of mixed thing.
Yeah.
Brandon's doing something different.
Yeah, in honor of this 7.5 episode, I have the Colorado USA branded the Oscar Blues Piner Throwback IPA. So I'm just going to open that up.
It's not from Michigan. I'm surprised. Remember that game when Colorado beat Michigan? Do you remember that?
Oh my gosh, you were just talking about Westbrook the other day, and I almost like that.
I
Anyway,
remember that.
so during the break, we were talking about a few things, and one of the things that was kind of interesting in our conversation is, one of the main easy things to get excited about when like a smaller company is infused with like a very large consulting firm is, we're gonna have all these access to clients, right? All these clients we never had access to. We're gonna just like sell. It's gonna be really easy. It's gonna be no problem, right? Well, based on what we were just talking about before the break, in the conversation before, it's about infusing that DNA, like getting that that CRISPR thing. Because if you're outside of that DNA,
What is this CRISPR thing you keep talking about?
you can adjust DNA.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
CRISPR.
Okay, got it.
But if you're outside of that DNA, like you start looked at as being like something that's attacking it, right? And that the corporation is going to basically send all its antibodies after it and say that's not going to work for us. I mean, I'm kind of interested in that conversation.
Yeah, well, like the white blood cells, like your Bill Paxton favorite movie, right?
Yep,
I mean, so. Well, I think here's the issue with that. Yes, you do have access to new clients, which is great because you have access to actually not just clients but new markets, right? And you might even be able to organize yourself around markets that you didn't have the ability to either have input into or attract or whatever. However, the same principle applies, which is you have to educate the clients, educate the corporate entities, right?
Yeah,
the account leads in the same way. So there's an education process that goes in, and I've been a part of this for a long time, which is, everybody says, well, Agile, it's just about developers. Like as long as you get developers to go along, will Agile be successful? Well, no, you have to educate the sales team. You have to educate the support team. Why are we doing more releases? Think about it. The support team doesn't understand more than a 2-year cycle of releases. If you're releasing every 6 months, they're like, well, that doesn't make sense to us. So there's this whole apparatus that you have to address. While, again, you do have access to new markets, to new clients, which is a very exciting part of it.
Yeah.
You have to consider the fact that there is going to be a period of time in which you have to educate all the downstream. It's not just about software development. It's all the downstream systems that enable a product to be sold. Marketing, product marketing. Sales, all of those things have to be addressed as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting in that, it is exciting, right, in terms of those things, but how do you kind of motivate yourself and the individuals that are part of that smaller organization? Like, what's the motivation to get into that?
It's actually interesting that you're asking that question, and It's I don't think a very good academic answer, but I will say sheer force of will.
That's just not good for me.
Well, I know because you're this resident nerd. I get it, but
I need research.
It literally is sheer force of will. It is just literally having the enthusiasm that people who work for a corporate entity don't have. That a small company has to have enthusiasm to build their success and to keep momentum for what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And a large corporation, people get not complacent necessarily, but they get comfortable, and so you have to. Hopefully, you're infusing that with the new people in the organization. Hey, have you thought about doing this? Like this will help so much, and literally in your voice, in your being, talk to people about how excited you are about what we can do to help. And I think a lot of it is about being helpful. And a lot of these, they're used to just going, hey, I'm hitting my number. What's my bookings? What's my revenue recognition? They're thinking about those metrics and reports. And as we all know from an Agile perspective, that's not something we like to focus on, but
it's the reality of their
being,
as you said at the very beginning.
And maybe the reality of our situation in the future or the person who's being acquired. But it's, it is being enthusiastic and bringing them to your side. And there's no, I don't think there's any other option outside of being just really into what you're doing and being passionate. And if you're not that way, then you should probably move on. I always tell people that work for me and they're like, yeah, I'm just not really happy. And I'm like, well, don't make me let you let this place torture you one more day. Let me help you move on to a different place. And, that happens a lot, but for the people who want to take a chance and learn and be a part of something bigger, I think that, it's a good opportunity.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we're gonna call this a podcast, and thanks everyone for listening. Yeah, another one down, 7.5.
7.5 special edition, special episode.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Again, any questions or feedback, send it to feedback@agileafterdark.com.
Don't forget about the rants.
Oh yeah, the rants. You got rants coming. Don't worry about it. And it's reporting to stockholders. Fucking sad.
I'm sorry. You're the one who did it.
I'm gonna lock you in.
That's okay. We should probably do another take anyway, but that was good.
Fucking sad. You're being ridiculous right now.
The cat has entered Apollo 13. She found a hole in one of the docks that we...
Oh my god, fucking sass. We're on a roll.